A millionaire's private jet crashed in the desert, and the Bedouin who saved him turned out to be his long-lost brother. Philip Stone, at 58, was a man accustomed to control. He controlled a vast financial empire, a network of investments and holdings that spanned the globe. He controlled his schedule, his environment, his interactions with others. He was a man who demanded efficiency, precision, and, above all, results. His life was a carefully orchestrated symphony of board meetings, conference calls, and high-stakes negotiations, all conducted from the sterile comfort of his penthouse office or the luxurious confines of his private jet. He was flying today from Los Angeles to Santa Fe, New Mexico. The purpose of the trip was ostensibly to review a potential investment in a luxury resort development. But in truth, Philip was seeking an escape, a brief respite from the relentless pressures of his business. He had been feeling increasingly restless, dissatisfied, a nagging sense of emptiness that his wealth and power couldn't alleviate. The jet, a Gulfstream G650, was a symbol of his success, a flying palace equipped with every conceivable amenity: plush leather seats, a state-of-the-art entertainment system, a fully stocked bar, and a private bedroom. He was the sole passenger, attended to by a two-person crew: Captain Evans, a seasoned pilot, and Sarah, a young, efficient flight attendant. As the jet soared above the rugged, arid landscape of the American Southwest, Philip gazed out the window, his expression a mixture of boredom and discontent. He had always been drawn to the desert, to its vastness, its stark beauty, its unforgiving nature. It was a world away from the artificial, controlled environment he inhabited, a world that reminded him of the raw, untamed forces of nature, forces that even his wealth and power couldn't control. He was lost in thought, contemplating his life, his choices, his increasingly strained relationship with his only child, a daughter who resented his constant absence and his obsession with work. He was thinking about his past, about his childhood, about the family he had lost contact with years ago. Suddenly, the jet lurched violently, throwing Philip from his seat. The lights flickered, then died, plunging the cabin into darkness. A deafening roar filled the air, followed by a series of terrifying crashes and the sickening screech of tearing metal. The jet was in a steep dive, plummeting towards the earth. Captain Evans's voice, strained and panicked, crackled over the intercom. "Brace for impact. Brace for impact." Philip, his body thrown against the bulkhead, felt a surge of terror, a primal fear that stripped away all pretense of control, of power, of invincibility. He closed his eyes, bracing himself for the inevitable, his life flashing before him, a series of regrets, of missed opportunities, of unspoken words. The impact was cataclysmic. The jet slammed into the desert floor, the force of the collision tearing it apart, sending debris flying in all directions. The world went black. Silence descended, broken only by the crackling of flames, the whisper of the wind, and the distant howl of a coyote. The wreckage of the Gulfstream, once a symbol of unimaginable wealth and privilege, lay scattered across the desert floor, a testament to the fragility of human life and the unforgiving power of nature. Philip Stone, the millionaire who had controlled everything, was now at the mercy of the elements, his fate uncertain, his survival hanging by a thread. The flight, intended as a brief escape, had become a nightmare, a plunge into the unknown, a confrontation with his own mortality, and ultimately, a catalyst for a reunion he could never have imagined. The crash was not just a physical event, but a symbolic one, shattering his carefully constructed world and setting the stage for a journey of self-discovery and reconciliation. Consciousness returned in fragments, a jumble of pain, confusion, and a disorienting sense of unreality. Philip Stone opened his eyes, his vision blurred, his head throbbing. He was lying on his back, amidst the wreckage of the jet, the acrid smell of smoke and fuel filling his nostrils. He tried to move, but a searing pain shot through his left leg, pinning him to the ground. He looked down and saw that his leg was trapped beneath a twisted piece of metal, the bone likely broken. He was bleeding, his clothes torn and covered in dust and debris. He was alive, miraculously, but he was also stranded, alone, injured, and utterly helpless in the vast, unforgiving expanse of the southwestern desert. He called out for help, his voice hoarse and weak, but only silence answered him. He tried to reach for his phone, but it was gone, lost somewhere in the wreckage. He was cut off from the world, his usual lines of communication severed, his wealth and power utterly useless in this desperate situation. The sun beat down mercilessly, the heat intensifying with each passing hour. Dehydration set in quickly, his throat parched, his lips cracked, his body screaming for water. He knew that without help, he wouldn't survive long. He tried to free his leg, pulling and tugging at the metal that trapped him, but the pain was excruciating and his efforts were futile. He was losing strength, his hope dwindling, his thoughts turning to his daughter, to the regrets he had carried for so long, to the life he had lived and the mistakes he had made. He drifted in and out of consciousness, his mind playing tricks on him, conjuring images of his past, of his childhood, of his family, of his brother, Michael, from whom he had been separated for decades. He remembered their childhood, growing up in a small town in Arizona, their close bond, their shared dreams, their youthful adventures. He remembered the family tragedy that had torn them apart, the bitter arguments, the accusations, the eventual estrangement. He had always blamed Michael, resented him for his choices, for his perceived betrayal. He had cut him out of his life, focusing instead on his career, on building his empire, on proving himself worthy of the success he had achieved. Now, lying here on the brink of death, he realized the futility of his ambitions, the emptiness of his wealth, the profound loneliness of his existence. He longed for connection, for forgiveness, for a chance to make amends. As darkness began to fall, the temperature plummeted, the desert air turning cold and biting. Philip shivered uncontrollably, his body weakened by injury, dehydration, and exhaustion. He knew that this night could be his last. He closed his eyes, his thoughts turning to prayer, a desperate plea for help, for salvation, for a miracle. He had never been a religious man, but in this moment of utter vulnerability, he found himself reaching out to a higher power, begging for a second chance. Just as he was about to succumb to despair, he heard a sound, a faint, rhythmic sound that broke through the silence of the desert night. It was the sound of footsteps approaching slowly, deliberately. Hope, fragile but real, flickered within him. He was not alone. Someone was out there. Someone had found him. The stranded millionaire, stripped of his power and privilege, was about to face his rescuer, a rescuer who would unknowingly hold the key to his past and the potential for his future. The desert, once a symbol of his isolation and despair, was about to become the stage for a reunion that defied all odds, a testament to the enduring power of family and the unpredictable twists of fate. The footsteps grew closer, and Philip, his strength waning, managed to raise his head, his eyes straining to see through the darkness. A figure emerged from the shadows, tall and lean, silhouetted against the faint glow of the moon. The man was dressed in simple, worn clothing, jeans, a faded cotton shirt, and boots that had seen countless miles. He wore a wide-brimmed hat that shaded his face, and he carried a long, sturdy walking stick. He moved with a quiet grace, a natural ease that spoke of a life lived in harmony with the land. He approached the wreckage cautiously, his eyes scanning the scene, assessing the damage, searching for signs of life. He saw Philip, lying amidst the debris, his face pale and drawn, his eyes filled with a mixture of pain and desperate hope. The man knelt beside him, his expression calm and compassionate. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice deep and resonant, his accent carrying the subtle rhythms of the Southwest. Philip tried to speak, but his throat was too dry, his voice a mere whisper. "Water," he managed to croak. The man nodded, understanding. He reached for a canteen hanging from his belt and carefully poured a small amount of water into Philip's parched mouth. The water was cool and refreshing, a lifeline in the desolate landscape. "Thank you," Philip whispered, his voice gaining strength. I thought I was going to die." The man smiled, a gentle, reassuring smile that lit up his weathered face. "You're not going to die," he said. "Not on my watch. My name is Daniel." Daniel. The name struck a chord in Philip's memory, but he was too weak, too disoriented, to place it. He focused on the man's face, studying his features, searching for something familiar. Daniel was Native American, his skin tanned and weathered by the sun, his eyes dark and intelligent, his hair long and black, streaked with silver. He had a quiet strength about him, a sense of calm and assurance that put Philip at ease. "I'm Philip," he said, his voice still weak. "My plane, it crashed." Daniel nodded. "I saw the smoke," he said. "I followed the trail of wreckage. You're lucky to be alive." He examined Philip's injuries, his touch gentle but firm. "Your leg is broken," he said, "and you've lost a lot of blood. I need to get you out of here, to a safe place where I can tend to your wounds." Philip looked at him, his eyes filled with gratitude and a growing sense of trust. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "You saved my life." Daniel shook his head. "It was meant to be," he said. "I was guided to this place. You were meant to be found." He carefully helped Philip to sit up, supporting his weight, his strong arms providing a much-needed sense of security. He then fashioned a makeshift splint for Philip's leg, using pieces of wreckage and strips of cloth torn from his own shirt. He worked with a quiet efficiency, his movements skilled and purposeful. He was clearly experienced in wilderness survival and providing aid in emergency situations. He was a man of the desert, a man who understood its dangers and its secrets. As Daniel worked, Philip studied him, his mind struggling to make sense of a nagging feeling of familiarity. There was something about the man, something about his eyes, his voice, his mannerisms, that reminded him of someone from his past. But his thoughts were interrupted by a sharp pain in his leg, a reminder of his precarious situation. He focused on Daniel, on his rescuer, on the man who had appeared out of the darkness, a beacon of hope in the desolate landscape. The meeting was more than just a rescue. It was a collision of two worlds, a wealthy, privileged man brought face to face with the harsh realities of survival and the simple, profound kindness of a stranger. The rescuer was not just a savior, but a potential link to a past that Philip had long tried to forget, a past that was now, quite literally, staring him in the face. Daniel managed to get Philip to a small, sheltered cave a short distance from the crash site. It was a natural formation in the rock, providing protection from the elements and a degree of privacy. Daniel had clearly used the cave before. There were signs of previous occupation, a small fire pit, a stack of firewood, and some basic supplies. He built a fire, the flames casting flickering shadows on the cave walls, providing warmth and a sense of comfort. He gave Philip more water and some dried meat, offering it with a quiet, unassuming generosity. As Philip ate, regaining some of his strength, he looked at Daniel, his curiosity growing. "How did you find me?" he asked. "This place it's in the middle of nowhere." Daniel smiled. "I live here," he said. "This is my home. I know this land, every canyon, every rock, every trail. I was drawn to the smoke from the crash. I felt a disturbance." He spoke with a quiet spirituality, a connection to the land that Philip, a man of the city, could barely comprehend. "You live out here alone?" Philip asked, incredulous. Daniel nodded. "Most of the time," he said. "I have a small cabin a few miles from here. I live a simple life, close to nature. It's the way of my people." He explained that he was a member of a local Native American tribe, that he had chosen to live a traditional lifestyle, following the ways of his ancestors, honoring the land and its spirits. As they talked, Philip began to feel more comfortable, more at ease in Daniel's presence. He found himself opening up, sharing his own story, his life of wealth and privilege, his recent feelings of emptiness and dissatisfaction. "I've spent my life chasing success," Philip said, his voice tinged with regret. "Building an empire, accumulating wealth. But it doesn't mean anything. Not anymore. I've lost sight of what's truly important." Daniel listened patiently, his expression thoughtful. Sometimes, he said, we need to lose our way to find ourselves. Sometimes, we need to be stripped of everything to appreciate what truly matters. The conversation drifted to their families, their childhoods. Philip, prompted by Daniel's gentle questioning, found himself talking about his upbringing, about his parents, about his brother, Michael. We were close when we were kids, Philip said, his voice wistful. We grew up in Arizona, not far from here. We used to explore these canyons, these mountains. We were inseparable. He described their childhood adventures, their shared dreams, their youthful bond. He spoke of their father, a stern, demanding man who had always favored Philip, the more academically inclined son. He spoke of their mother, a kind and gentle woman who had tried to hold the family together, but who had ultimately succumbed to illness when they were still young. What happened? Daniel asked, his voice soft. Why did you lose touch? Philip hesitated, the pain of the past still raw. It was a family tragedy, he said. Our father, he died suddenly. There was a dispute over his will. A lot of anger, a lot of bitterness. Michael, he blamed me. He thought I had cheated him out of his inheritance. We had a terrible fight, and we haven't spoken since. That was 30 years ago. He looked down at his hands, his fingers tracing the lines on his palms, the lines that mirrored the deep fissures of regret in his heart. I tried to reach out to him a few times, Philip continued, but he wouldn't answer my calls. He wouldn't return my letters. He vanished. I don't even know where he is, if he's even alive. Daniel was silent for a moment, his gaze fixed on the flickering flames of the fire. He then reached into a small pouch he carried at his waist and pulled out a small, intricately carved wooden box. He opened the box, revealing a single object, a silver ring, engraved with an intricate design. My father gave me this ring, Daniel said, his voice low and filled with emotion. He gave it to me before he died. He told me it was a family heirloom that had been passed down through generations. He said it was a symbol of connection, of family, of belonging. Philip stared at the ring, his heart pounding in his chest. He recognized it instantly. It was identical to a ring he had given to his brother, Michael, years ago, a matching set they had purchased together as teenagers, a symbol of their brotherhood, their bond. He had lost his own ring long ago, but he had never forgotten the design, the intricate carving, the weight of it in his hand. He reached out, his fingers trembling, and gently touched the ring. The metal was cool against his skin, but it sent a jolt of recognition through him, a wave of memories, of emotions, of a past he had thought lost forever. The echoes of yesterday, the shared stories, the childhood memories, had converged in this moment, in this small, isolated cave, in the presence of this stranger who was about to become something far more significant. The ring, a seemingly insignificant object, was the key, the catalyst, the undeniable proof of a connection that had been severed by time and circumstance, but not by blood. Philip stared at the ring, his mind reeling, his heart pounding. He looked at Daniel, his eyes searching, questioning, filled with a dawning realization that was almost too incredible to believe. Where did you get this? Philip asked, his voice trembling. Daniel looked at him, his dark eyes filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. My father, he said. He gave it to me before he died. He said it belonged to my brother. Philip felt a lump form in his throat, his breath catching. Your brother? He whispered. What was your father's name? Daniel hesitated, then said, his name was Joseph. Joseph Carter. But he changed it years ago. He said he had to leave his old life behind. He never told me why. Joseph Carter. The name echoed in Philip's mind, a name he hadn't spoken aloud in decades, a name that was inextricably linked to his own past, to his own family, to his own lost brother. He reached into his wallet, his hands shaking, and pulled out an old, faded photograph. It was a picture of him and Michael, as teenagers, standing side by side, their arms slung around each other's shoulders, their faces beaming with youthful exuberance. They were both wearing the rings, the matching silver rings that were now the undeniable proof of their connection. He showed the photograph to Daniel, his voice choked with emotion. This is me," he said, "and this is my brother, Michael. We had these rings made as a symbol of our brotherhood." Daniel took the photograph, his eyes widening in disbelief. He stared at the image, at the young faces of the two brothers, then looked at Philip, his gaze searching, questioning, filled with a growing understanding. He slowly raised his hand, showing Philip the ring on his finger. "My father, he told me his name was originally Michael," he said, his voice barely a whisper. He said he had a brother named Philip. The truth, so long hidden, so long denied, finally revealed itself. The two men, separated by circumstance, by tragedy, by decades of silence, were brothers. The millionaire and the Native American, the city dweller and the man of the desert, were bound by blood, by family, by a shared past that neither of them had fully understood. Tears welled up in Philip's eyes, tears of grief, of relief, of overwhelming joy. He reached out, embracing Daniel, his brother, his long-lost brother. Daniel returned the embrace, his own emotions mirroring Philip's. He had grown up without a family, without a sense of belonging, always searching for a connection to his past. And now, in this unexpected, miraculous way, he had found it. They held each other tightly, two brothers reunited after a lifetime apart, their tears mingling, their hearts overflowing with a mixture of sorrow and joy. The silence of the desert night was broken by their sobs, by their whispered words of recognition, of forgiveness, of a love that had endured despite the years of separation. "Michael," Philip said, his voice choked with emotion. "It's really you. I thought I'd lost you forever." Daniel, Michael, nodded, his own voice thick with tears. I never forgot you, Philip," he said. I always wondered what happened to you." The revelation was a moment of profound emotional intensity, a convergence of past and present, a collision of two vastly different worlds. The ring, the photograph, the shared memories had shattered the barriers of time and circumstance, revealing the unbreakable bond of brotherhood. The millionaire and the Native American, the city dweller and the man of the desert, were no longer strangers. They were family. And in that moment, in that small, sheltered cave amidst the wreckage of a crashed plane in the vast expanse of the desert, a new chapter began, a chapter of reconciliation, of healing, and of a family reunited against all odds. The recognition scene was not just about identifying each other. It was about recognizing the enduring power of family, the unbreakable bonds of blood, and the miraculous possibility of finding connection in the most unexpected of places. The initial shock of recognition gave way to a flood of questions, of memories, of shared history and divergent paths. Philip and Michael, who decided to continue using his chosen name, Daniel, while embracing his birth name, spent the rest of the night in the cave, talking, sharing their stories, piecing together the fragments of their fractured family history. Daniel, with the help of a satellite phone he carried for emergencies, contacted his tribe, explaining the situation and requesting assistance. He assured them that Philip was not a threat, but a long-lost relative, a brother he had never known he had. Philip learned about Daniel's life, his upbringing within the Native American community, his deep connection to the land, his commitment to preserving his people's traditions and culture. He learned that their father, Joseph/Michael, had changed his name and fled to the reservation after a bitter dispute with Philip over the family inheritance, a dispute fueled by their father's favoritism and Philip's youthful arrogance. Joseph had found refuge and acceptance within the tribe, marrying a woman from the community and starting a new life. He had never spoken of his past, of his brother, of the life he had left behind, until his final days, when he had entrusted Daniel with the ring and the fragmented story of his lost family. Philip, in turn, shared his own story, His relentless pursuit of wealth and success, his empty marriage, his strained relationship with his daughter, and the growing sense of dissatisfaction that had plagued him despite his material achievements. He spoke of his regrets, his mistakes, his longing for a connection he had unknowingly severed years ago. He learned that their father has passed away. He listened with growing shame and remorse as Daniel described their father's final years, his loneliness, his regret over the family rift, and his unwavering hope that his sons would one day be reunited. The conversation was not easy. There were moments of anger, of resentment, of blame. But there was also understanding, forgiveness, and a growing sense of connection, a recognition of the shared blood, the shared history that bound them together. Daniel, though raised in a vastly different culture, understood Philip's ambition, his drive, his need for validation. He saw the pain beneath the surface, the loneliness that had driven him to seek solace in material success. Philip, in turn, began to appreciate Daniel's way of life, his connection to nature, his spiritual grounding, his commitment to his community. He saw the wisdom in his brother's choices, the richness of his experiences, the profound sense of belonging that he had found in his adopted culture. As dawn broke, painting the desert sky with vibrant hues of orange and purple, a rescue helicopter arrived, dispatched by Daniel's tribe. Philip's injuries were assessed, and he was airlifted to a hospital in Albuquerque, his brother by his side. The news of the plane crash and miraculous reunion of the two brothers quickly spread, attracting media attention and sparking a wave of public interest. The story of the millionaire and the Native American, separated by tragedy and reunited by fate, captured the imagination of the nation. But for Philip and Daniel, the public spectacle was secondary. They were focused on rebuilding their relationship, on getting to know each other, on bridging the vast gulf that had separated them for so long. They spent hours talking, sharing memories, exploring their differences, and discovering their common ground. They visited their father's grave together, paying their respects and seeking closure. They met each other's families, Daniel introducing Philip to his wife and children, Philip introducing Daniel to his daughter, who was initially shocked and confused, but ultimately welcomed her uncle with open arms. The reconnection was not without its challenges. There were cultural differences to navigate, past hurts to overcome, and years of lost time to make up for. But their shared blood, their shared history, and their growing affection for each other provided a strong foundation upon which to build a new relationship, a new family, a new future. The exploration of their shared history and their differences was not just a process of catching up. It was a process of healing, of understanding, and of forging a bond that had been broken but not destroyed, a bond that was now stronger, more resilient, and more meaningful than ever before. The months following the rescue and reunion were a period of significant change and adjustment for both Philip and Daniel. Philip, recovering from his injuries, underwent a profound personal transformation. The near-death experience, coupled with the rediscovery of his brother, had shattered his old priorities, forcing him to reevaluate his life, his values, and his relationships. He stepped down as CEO of his company, appointing a successor and transitioning to a less demanding role as chairman of the board. He sold his sprawling mansion, downsizing to a smaller, more comfortable home closer to nature. He began to dedicate more time to his daughter, rebuilding their strained relationship and forging a stronger, more meaningful connection. He also became deeply involved in Daniel's community, supporting their cultural preservation efforts, funding educational programs, and advocating for their rights. He learned about their traditions, their history, their struggles, and he developed a deep respect for their way of life. He and Daniel spent a great deal of time together, exploring the desert, sharing stories, and building a brotherhood that had been denied to them for so long. They went on hunting trips, fishing expeditions, and long walks, their conversations ranging from the mundane to the profound, their bond strengthening with each shared experience. Daniel, in turn, embraced his newfound family, welcoming Philip into his life and introducing him to his world. He shared his knowledge of the land, his spiritual beliefs, his deep connection to nature. He helped Philip to understand the importance of community, of family, of living a life in balance with the world around him. Philip is still learning the language. Philip also used his wealth and influence to address the systemic issues that had contributed to his family separation. He established a foundation dedicated to supporting Native American communities, providing resources for education, healthcare, and economic development. He became a vocal advocate for social justice, using his platform to raise awareness about the challenges faced by indigenous peoples and to promote understanding and reconciliation. The media attention surrounding their story eventually faded, but the impact of their reunion continued to ripple outwards, touching the lives of many. Their story became a symbol of hope, of forgiveness, of the enduring power of family, and of the possibility of finding connection in the most unexpected of places. Years later, Philip and Daniel stood together on a hilltop overlooking the vast expanse of the desert, the same desert that had nearly claimed Philip's life and had ultimately brought them together. The sun was setting, casting a warm golden glow on the rugged landscape. "I never imagined," Philip said, his voice filled with emotion, "that my life would take such a turn. I spent so many years chasing the wrong things, focusing on the wrong priorities. I almost lost everything, including you." Daniel placed a hand on his brother's shoulder. "We all make mistakes, Philip," he said. "The important thing is that we learn from them, that we grow, that we find our way back to what truly matters." They stood in silence for a moment, watching the sun dip below the horizon, painting the sky with vibrant colors. "I'm grateful," Philip said. "Grateful for this second chance, grateful for you, grateful for this life." Daniel smiled. "Me too, brother," he said. "Me too." The new horizon, once a distant, uncertain prospect, was now a reality, a shared future filled with hope, with family, with a renewed sense of purpose. The millionaire and the Native American, the city dweller and the man of the desert, had found their way back to each other, their lives intertwined, their destinies forever changed by a fateful crash, a shared ring, and the enduring power of brotherhood. The aftermath of their reunion was not just about healing the wounds of the past, but about building a new future, a future grounded in family, forgiveness, and a shared commitment to making the world a better place. The story, ultimately, was a testament to the enduring strength of the human spirit, the transformative power of connection, and the boundless possibilities that emerge when we open our hearts to the unexpected gifts that life, in its infinite wisdom, may bring.